Things first, I'm going to take my top. I'm a visual person, so I like to lay everything out before I sew it, so I know that I don't make any sewing mistakes, like pinning the wrong sides together or something. Okay. So I have my back pieces back here. We are not going to sew this, leave that open, but we're just going to sew right across these two top pieces. Okay. Alright, the shoulders are now sewn together. We're going to open this up. We're going to do a rolled hem along the neck hole and both of the armholes. If you don't know how to do a rolled hem, I have a video on how to. I would really suggest watching it and getting a rolled hem foot. It is the fastest, easiest way to do necklines, especially on children's clothes and if you're using cotton. If you are not using cotton and it stretches or something like that, you're going to have to do a regular hem. You'll take your scissors and just make little notches the whole way around the curve and then fold it back about 1/4 inch, and on the wrong side of the fabric just follow that around the whole way around. But I'm just going to do it with a rolled hem. It is so fast and easy. Again, if you don't have a rolled hem foot, they are so worth it. It's probably my favorite foot that I've ever bought as an accessory for my machine. Okay. And again, I have a video on how to use a rolled hem foot if you're having trouble. Make sure your needle's in the center position. Put the needle down. Maybe. There we go. And then do make sure, since we're sewing over a seam, you just need to notch it in where that seam is so that it'll fit through your rolled hem foot. Again, notch the other side right at the seam so it'll fit through the foot. Okay. And just real quick, I just want to show you why I like this so much. If I can. There we go. Do you see how nice this edge is? There's no raw edges, so nothing's gonna fray. And the other side just looks so perfect as well. And then just iron it good from the top side here, and it'll lay perfectly flat. I'm gonna do the same thing around both of the armholes. Again, just make sure right where that seam is, you just want to make a notch in on both sides. Just to be sure that your fabric will fit through. Okay. Same thing on the other side. So your shirt should look, or the top part of the shirt should look like this now, all attached. All the edges are done. We're just gonna bring these down, bring both of them down. We're gonna line up those nice edges we just did. And we're gonna sew, starting at that nice edge, we're gonna sew down. And we're doing a 1/2 inch seam on everything. We're going to repeat that on the other side. Remember, starting at the good edge. Okay, so now our shirt is starting to look like a little shirt. We're going to take the ruffled part of the shirt, we're going to baste the top of it. Oh. Looks like I cut mine in 2 pieces. If you had to cut yours in 2 pieces, mine was actually not long enough. I was just using a scrap to cut it all in one. So the back needs to have an opening. All you're going to do is fold one of the pieces in half. Like so. And then right at that center fold, just go ahead and open it up. And then with the right sides together, we will sew this edge and the other edge. I'll go ahead and do that real quick. now it's all one piece. And we cut it in half before we do that so that there's not a seam right in the middle of the front of this little dress. Okay, so now we need to gather this to go onto the shirt on our sewing machine. Let's see. Our stitch length, which is the dashes that go straight up, not the ziggy-zaggy ones. I'm going to open that as much as my machine will allow me to. Okay. And I'm just going to sew the whole way across at about a 1/4 inch seam. Do not trim your fabric close, keep it long. We're going to grab one thread, just start pulling and gather it the whole way across. Okay. Now, and I obviously gathered this way too far, so I'm just going to open it back up a little bit. Alright, so with the right sides together, we're going to find those two side seams right there, put a pin there so that those side seams match up. Find the other side seam. Put a pin. Just kind of straighten that out. Maybe put a pin in the center. And one on each end. And while you're doing this, just make sure your gathers are evenly gathered across the shirt. And then we're just going to sew across. I like to sew with the gathers side up. We're going to do a 1/2 inch seam so that we make sure that the stitches that we used to make our gathers are inside of the seam. Make sure your stitch length is back at 2.5. And again, you can even this out while you sew. can pull out the gathering thread. You don't have to if you can't get it out though. In other words, don't stress out about it. Okay. So here's the little shirt. We're gonna hem the bottom now. So at one end, all I'm gonna do is fold this back about 1/2 inch. If your fabric is fraying really bad, go ahead and fold it twice. Maybe just don't do it quite as wide then. Okay, and we're gonna sew all the way across. Beautiful. All right. Good job. So now all we have to do is the back. So with the right sides together, line up the back nice. And I don't want to do buttons the whole way down. So, just trying to think here. Right where the seam is, as long as the top is lined up nice and the seam is lined up nice, we're going to sew from there down to the bottom of the skirt. That seam I just sewed, I'm gonna open it, maybe. Okay, I'm gonna press it open. I'm gonna press the sides open as well. Now all we have to do is attach some buttons to the back. I like to do this from the right side. So turn everything right side out. Okay, so I'm going to switch out for a buttonhole foot. This like opening part goes at the front. Just gonna snap that in. This sewing machine I'm using right now does not have a buttonhole number to plug in, so just go to a zigzag stitch. Your length you need to put at 0. Okay. Put your fabric and your buttons in place. You want to center those holes. Then your stitch width, you're going to increase until you can manually stick it in both holes. Moved it a little bit too wide. When you can do a couple turns and it goes into the holes, just put your foot down. And voila! Your button is sewed on. Let's go ahead and repeat that with the other buttons. Alright, our buttons are on. We're going to do the buttonholes next. Now we are going to actually do the buttonholes. This is a buttonhole foot. I know they're kind of intimidating if you've never used one, but I promise they're easy to use. Just stick your button in this back hole and move it so that it's the same size as the button. And you're going to put the button in the back, attach your presser foot, and pick that back up. Your machine has this little drop down back here. Let me see if I can get this better. This drop down right here. Pull that down and place it in front of that button holder. So there's a switch here for your button. Put it right there. Alright. And then it's going to start sewing at the bottom of the button. So all your little lines, line them up to the bottom of the button across from it. Select a buttonhole option on your machine. And just press down. That was wrong. We're now going to make the actual buttonholes on the other side. So this is a buttonhole attachment. I know this is intimidating if you've never used one before, but I promise they're easy to learn. You stick your button in this back part and move it to the right amount. And then on your machine, you have this little buttonhole attachment that will come down. You need to place it in between these two notches. Because see, when I move this button, this hole, that's the size of the hole your button needs. Does that make sense? See, there's two notches here. 1, 2. And that notch hole, whatever. See? So your buttonhole attachment, just stick it in between those. That's the best way I can explain it to remember. Because to me, that's one of the hardest parts, is remembering where that stick goes. So in between those two. And see how it can only go backwards? So it's in the down. So you need to start at the bottom of the button. And I actually just popped my button in there somehow. Whoops. Oh goodness. Alright, so here's my fabric. Line it up with the first buttonhole. And again, it's going to be at the bottom of the button. It goes up. Choose a buttonhole number. Whoop. It's a little bit too close to the top. I'm going to have to redo that. You don't want to get too close to the top here. Really, my top button might have to move down a little bit. Just because if it goes off of the fabric, it's going to get stuck and not be able to go back on. Okay, so bottom of the fabric. And you don't even have to do anything. Next, we put a pin in the top Okay. Grab a seam ripper. Push your seam ripper at the bottom of the buttonhole through the fabric. Gently push up. That needle will stop it, otherwise it's going to break through that seam you just created, and you're going to be very upset. And voila, a little buttonhole. I'm going to test and see if that lines up okay, if I need to move that. Oh yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to go through and do the rest of those as well real quick. And there you have it, all done. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions that need to be answered. Hope you enjoyed this and that it helped you out with your pattern. If you some reason found this video by chance, you can download the pattern from my Etsy shop. I'll put a link below. Again, just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Bye.